So I think we will we'll get started. So welcome everybody to the Kissoon Carr legal webinar. Thanks so much for all your support for all of our webinars to date. Just for those of you that are new to Kissoon Carr, we are a legal recruitment firm headquartered in London that supports law firms from a UK, US and boutique perspective globally. We also are the proud hosts of the Legally Speaking podcast, which is one of the top legal podcasts in the world, which Olga, one of our guests today, has featured on in our second season. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm delighted to be joined today by two very special guests. We have Olga Ivannikova, who is the founder of her own firm called Private Goodness, and she's going to tell you all about that and her subject matter expertise very, very shortly. And she's also joined by the founder, Sheena Thomson of Conduit Associates. So a very warm welcome to both of you. And to start, I'm going to hand over very swiftly to Olga, who's going to give a presentation on how you protect your reputation online. So over to you, Olga.
Thank you very much, Rob, and hello everyone. Thank you so much for your interest in the topic. I'm just going to, oh, not this one. Full screen, yes. That's better. You can see my presentation? Brilliant. So we will talk about how to protect your reputation online. And usually by day, I'm a corporate responsibility consultant here in London. But I've also started doing training on online ethics recently because I realized that the way our companies are judged are not just by our CSR reports, but also by our daily social media presence. So people make judgments about what they think about you and what they think about your organization by what they see on LinkedIn. So I think it's a very important topic, and our online presence is very important because when we say something, it's to the whole world, right? And when we post something to the whole world, well, it requires a little thought. Deloitte said that social media is a domain for building or destroying reputations. And I'm sure you can think of many examples of brands that have built amazing reputations on social media, Kissoon Carr being one. And all of us who follow Kissoon Carr will know that they post such interesting content and we feel like we know them. And we feel like they are great people to work with. But I'm sure we will also know lots of stories about somebody posting on the internet things that make you think, I don't want to work with that person. So we'll be talking about how to avoid that today. And the truth is that we all post so much online and we spend so much of our lives on the internet. And social interactions aren't easy. We don't have body language, we don't have the tone of voice, we don't have the facial expressions. So it's hard. And also, it's an unforgiving place. So you can say 1,000 things right. You can say 1,000 things right, and then one thing wrong or offensive. And everyone will pick out on that one thing that you got wrong. And you can try and defend yourself saying, but look at years and years of content that was really positive. And that defense doesn't always work. I think that it should be more forgiving perhaps, but this is the reality in which we operate and in which we have to run our businesses. So another thing is that while our friends might forget what you say at a party, if you say something that's a little rude, the internet never forgets. What you post will always be there. And even if you delete it after, the chances are somebody could have taken a screenshot of it and it'll come back. It can come back later, and that can be misinterpreted, and all sorts of things, negative things can happen. I'll give you one recent example of a consequence of a tweet, which is a bit extreme, but I'll tell you anyway. Elon Musk, that's the name. You can't talk about online ethics without mentioning his name. On the 1st of May this year at 4 p.m., he tweeted, Tesla's stock price is too high, IMO. So in my opinion, 9 words if you count IMO as 9 words, as 3 words. The next day, Tesla's stock stumbled more than 11%. So by noon, the day after the tweet, it's reported that the value ran down by $16 billion with one tweet. And of course, Mr. Musk is going to keep his job. But many of us wouldn't be so lucky if that's the kind of damage that we've done to our organization. So it's just another point why we should really be very, very careful about what we say. The FT, Financial Times, reported that more people now leaving their jobs, executives, partners, bosses have to leave their jobs because of unethical behavior rather than financial performance. So it's a really good reason to be talking about it at all levels. Sometimes people think, oh, it's somebody junior on Twitter who is saying something wrong, but no, it's people at all levels. There are ways how we can protect ourselves, and the best ways you can see on the slide is to wait. And this acronym, wait, why am I talking, comes from Samaritans, or from Samaritans training, but it applies to the situation as well. If before you post, you just think and wait for a few seconds and consider, why am I doing this? What is the purpose? Then you're already protecting yourself. And I think in lawyers, I worked with many lawyers with more than 100 firms. And I think that the pressure is to just respond straight away sometimes. And you just think, oh, the client is waiting or somebody is waiting. I need to do this now. I need to do it straight away. I should have done it yesterday. And so the speed is it can be so quick, and so you don't stop. But for this, and because it's very important, I really would recommend to think. And the good question, so why are you posting? I don't have access to chat when I have, oh, maybe I do. Can you share maybe the reason why think about the last thing that you posted on social media and think, what was the purpose of it? Maybe if you can share it with us, that would be really great. Was it to promote something? The last thing I've done was to promote this. That's an okay reason to post, because we want more people to spend time with us this evening. Was it to help or to give advice? Was it to share something, or maybe to complain? And to complain is a very common reason, but is also, it can be very cathartic, but also, ill-advised. Do we have anyone, or Rob, do you want to say what was the purpose of the last thing you posted?
Yeah, I think one of the posts that I did recently, I can see if I can try and find it, was around, let me grab it, as around I was trying to, actually it's on my profile, as around failing. So I can share this with everyone. Let me just try and get the link for you now, assuming my internet's going to work okay. And I'm a big advocate as well of video content for those. So I'm just going to drop this in. Hopefully everyone can see that. And the reasons I posted that particular video, Olga, to answer your question, hopefully, was I believe you see a lot of positive social media, which is great, and people should talk about their successes, and they're right to do so. But I think it's, in terms of being authentic and honest, I can hold my hands up and say throughout my career, I've failed a lot, and I still fail every day, and I learn a lot every day. So I wanted to share that it's okay that failing is part of your journey. And I feel as a business owner, people may see me as a position of responsibility and look up to that. But even business owners, ourselves included, Olga, Sheena, I'm pretty sure we've made a lot of failings throughout our career. So I was very open in sharing my own experiences, that is okay. It's all part of the process, as long as you're acting with good intentions, trying to offer a service to maybe your prospect or your clients, whatever it may be. So that was a recent post that I did to try and inspire people to think, actually, if you fail at something, it's okay, keep going on.
And that's a very good reason, and that makes it more authentic as well. And I think we all crave authenticity on the internet. Some other reasons people shared is Morgan shared launch of Legal Women magazine. Very good reason. Somebody shared an event and a challenge to stand in solidarity. Somebody else shared, posted on LinkedIn about losing my job, and it's had a huge reaction. Well, LinkedIn is a place to talk about it, because maybe people can help you out. And other people shared for tweeting about thanking someone for tweeting an interesting article. A very good reason to post something, to thank someone for interesting content. And again, that's really good for your reputation. Somebody sees that all of their effort of providing good content are appreciated. It's fantastic. All very good reasons. I'll tell you a bad reason to post, and that is known officially as people on the internet are wrong. And it's people on the internet are wrong, aren't they? They just say things that are annoying so much of the time. But I want to say that it's not your job, and it's not my job, to correct them. If people say something that's wrong, maybe sometimes let it be. There are times when we do need to correct people. And I'll give you another recent example about solidarity. And it's somebody tweeted at Yorkshire Tea saying, "I'm so glad that you're not supporting the Black Lives Matter movement." And they responded saying, "We do support it, and we're just taking time to educate ourselves. And if you're racist, don't drink our tea." And that lady was furious, and she said, "Well, I'm not going to drink your tea anymore. I'm now going to drink PG Tips." And PG Tips responded saying, "We don't want any racist business neither." And together they coined a hashtag solidarity, but TEA. Anyway, it was brilliant, and it got them loads of publicity. And so there are sometimes, if somebody accuses you of racism, or if you see something that you just can't tolerate, to call it out, there might be good reasons to tell somebody that they're wrong. But you need to really pick your battles. So for example, the Yorkshire Tea, the reason why it went down so well is because they rarely pick fights with their customers. So when they do, it really matters. And a lot of the time when people say things on the internet, particularly now, maybe people are just stressed out. I think it's very difficult times, and people don't post the way they think. Their home situation might be difficult, they might be experiencing grief. So if they say something that's not quite right, perhaps instead of picking a fight with them, if you operate with empathy, that would be better. So the top tips so far are: don't say anything that can end up in a newspaper, and operate with empathy and kindness. One thing about the newspapers, is that we talk about social media, we talk about Twitter, because that's where a lot of social media storms happen. But lawyers and law students really be very careful with whatever you say over your email, because your email is not safe. Anything that you post online, anything that you share with others that somebody can share with somebody else or take a screenshot of, is not really private. And I'll tell you about a case from a Silver Circle law firm partner who was fined £15,000 for sending an email with a sexist joke. And he thought that he was sharing with people who had the same sense of humor, but it ended up in the legal press, and it also ended up at a solicitor's disciplinary tribunal. And there are many cases like that, where lawyers in the city who are sharing kind of lad jokes and just enjoying what they consider a lad culture, and I think everybody is with them, and they share jokes with their friends, but their friends then send it either to managing partners or to the press. So be very careful. So whatever you do on the internet, act as if the whole world is watching. Share next. The more view of lawyers as well, I would really check out, I'm only going to spend a little time on this, but check out the International Principles on Social Media Conduct for the Legal Profession that was prepared by the International Bar Association. In case if you can't read them, I'll read them out to you quickly. It's independence, integrity, responsibility, confidentiality, maintaining public confidence, and policy. I'll just very quickly confidentiality one, because people, of course, as lawyers, you know how important confidentiality is, but sometimes it gets forgotten on social media. So last year, a criminal solicitor was fined £1,500 for posting inappropriate social media posts about his client cases. So he would tell them which client it was and which court they were in, but which I don't know how he didn't get struck off actually. Anyway, but he also talks about criminal law cases by using emojis, so trivializing his cases on social media, and that didn't go down well with the profession. And the thing is, as a lawyer or somebody who's hoping to become a lawyer, you have to operate on a higher level, higher standard is applied to you. You have more, you're regulated more, you have a stricter code of conduct. And when you're saying something, you're not just saying this on behalf of yourself, you're representing the legal profession. And people have ideas of lawyers, that they're also, all sorts of ideas that are negative. And if you say something that reinforces that, you're not helping the profession. Where if you are operating responsibly and with integrity, you're helping the whole profession out as well. So policy, the last thing about policy is, I think it's really important for a firm to provide training on this. And it doesn't have to be very official, because a lot of things you already have. So it could be something like sharing these principles, but also sharing the code of conduct that you already have and making it clear that it's relevant to what you say online. Because sometimes people don't make the connection. They understand that what they do, what they say at their work matters under the code of conduct, but not when they're on LinkedIn. So it's for the organization to make that connection. And I would include in that policy, it has to be up to date, but I would include the use of email and training on how to use email, because we kind of think that people know. But I'll just give you an example from 2016 where an NHS trust was fined for revealing the names of 730 people who used an HIV service because a staff member used 2 instead of BCC. And all of these contact details were revealed. And so working in a law firm, you really need people to know the difference between CC and BCC. Don't assume that they know. And have a refresher on how to use all of the things if they don't. It doesn't have to be very long. So here, I'm going to share some cartoons with you. I commissioned them for my other course about networking face-to-face, but they all apply online. These are all things that I was told when I was not networking. So first mistake that people make, so there's a picture, I guess it's a rat, saying, there is no point for us to talk if you don't have a budget. If that's your persona online and you just want to sell, and if people are not buying, you're not interested in them, then you're not going to have a very good reputation, right? It's all about long-term relationships. It's about what do people think about your personal brand, about how people describe you. The second cartoon is a hippo saying, I'm a wealthy man. And I think there's a point to it about the times are really tough at the moment. And I think that maybe we should be more humble online than before. Loads of people are losing their jobs. So going on LinkedIn and showing off and being like, what lockdown? Business is great. And you should be promoting yourself, but be aware that the situation is very hard and people might not think of you in a very positive light. The last one here is about, it's actually the first time I went out networking with my business. And the first time I did a pitch, somebody said, oh, your pitch was great. Usually I don't like girls with short hair. And and people then said to me, why do people get upset all the time? Why is this political correctness gone mad? I'm just talking and everybody's getting upset. So here on the slide, you'll see protected characteristics under Equality Act. I'll read them out, but you know them anyway. So it's age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, and sexual orientation. So as a guidance, if you ever need to think should I not joke about, have a look at this list. So don't make jokes about somebody's sexual orientation, for example, on LinkedIn, and then expect to have a really good reputation. It's a really good guidance. It's all in the Equality Act for how to protect yourself and how to basically be, So to sum up, talk to your team about the importance of online ethics. And we all learn from each other. So I write courses on this. I talk about this all the time. And I make mistakes. And I learn from these mistakes, and so does everybody else. But if you have an open discussion where you can have these conversations and where people in your team can ask questions. So for example, if somebody's thinking, why can't I tell women that they're pretty? I'm being a nice person. If you have the kind of team culture where people can ask these questions and you can respond to them, then your company will be safer online. And ethics is not certain. It's not that these are the rules and say this and don't say this and this is it. It's about it's about removing this arrogance from thinking that you know everything, and to pause and ask yourself more questions. And every time you pause, you're protecting yourself online. So second thing is about robust and up-to-date social media policy and code of conduct. I think it's very important, and it has to be up to date because social media is changing so quickly. And thirdly, think about your brand values. And so, do you have brand values in your organization? And if you do, remember that you have to live them when you are talking on LinkedIn, because otherwise it's just too easy for somebody to say, oh, these are this company's brand values, but this person doesn't live in them. So be mindful of them. And the purpose of your content. So that's what we started with, about ask yourself, why am I doing this? Is this the best way for me to achieve this purpose? Is this the right platform for me to share it in? Should I be sharing this on LinkedIn? Maybe it's best to have it as a private message. So think before you click send. And finally, I would encourage everybody to have a plan for when things go wrong online. And Sheena, who is an amazing expert in all things risk, and has been in the military and dealt with situations much worse than Twitter storm, will tell us about how to handle when things don't go the situation when things don't go according to plan. So lastly from me, as I said before, I understand that now so many people, hundreds of thousands of people, are losing their jobs. So if you or anyone in your network has been made redundant, please feel free to connect with me, and I'll share my contact details next slide. If you need networking, online ethics training, I can send you free vouchers. I also do a course on corporate social responsibility for law firm. So if that might be helpful for you to do that when you're applying for your next job, be very happy to do that. And I also offer discounts for students and graduates. So that's all. Thank you very much for listening, and let's stay in touch. As my email, this presentation will also be sent to you. So do connect with me on all these platforms. Thank you very much. Over to Sheena.
Okay, thank you very much, Olga. Let me just, oh, wrong one. I'll just share my screen. There we go. Okay. Okay, can we all see my screen?
Yes. Is it possible to make it larger to full screen?
Yes.
Sheena,
Yeah, I'm just about to do that. So there we go.
Okay, so thank you very much, Olga. Lots of great information and very salient points in there. So just very briefly about me, as Olga mentioned, I was in the military. That was a long time ago, but what I now do is I help organisations and people that are either preparing for or are in crisis or are recovering from crisis. So I normally get the call when people are in trouble or they think trouble is brewing. And as you can see in my strapline, I help prepare people, help them respond and help them recover from crisis. And I work mainly with, well, a variety of clients, but also in the legal space. Oh, don't know what's happening there. Let's just have a look. Let's have a look. We'll go back to the beginning. So apologies for that. Mainly, I work with lawyers. I'm on a couple of benches of the city firms, two city legal firms that specialise in very specific areas of corporate practice, including the cyberspace, defamation, and a few other things besides. And I also work in the insurance space. So genuinely, when people have big problems, they tend to call me. So just moving on. So I'm going to talk to you about when things go wrong in the social media space, but I think not just social media, but the digital space, because you know, it's all interconnected with traditional media as well as digital media. So something might appear on social media and it becomes a big mainstream story and vice versa. But I think it's just important just to see how far things have come since social media first exploded in the early noughties. But these two graphs, so the first one was made in 2007 by a social scientist called Brian Solis, and it's called the what is now known as the conversation prism. And obviously there's a huge amount of work putting this together, but every couple of years or so they look at all the different social media platforms and messaging platforms and all the different ways that we communicate online, and they put together this prism, because obviously there's different areas of communication. We have it for, you know, networking, professional networking. We have it for professional information sharing, we have it for news gathering, we have it for content sharing, lots of different ways. Social media, there's hundreds of them. So it's a very complex space, and that's why it's so important that you're on this all the time, both as individuals and as lawyers advising clients. So just to move on, you can see it's a battle, and it is a battle. It's a battle. The military have been attuned to this for a number of years now. And yes, the British Army and many other armies and NATO, they all have units that specialise in this. And it's looking at the information space, because, you know, information is a weapon of war, believe it or not. And I think we've seen this in all sorts of documentaries that have been put out over the past few years. It's very, very interesting to study it. But this is 7 Brigade. It's the British Army's wing of information warfare. And the arrows that I pointed to just here, these are the areas which directly transfer into the civilian space, which is audience, actor and adversary analysis. So that's just monitoring what's going on out there. Lots of organisations and companies that specialise in it. Just monitoring, which is obviously mainly artificial intelligence. And then the other one is analysis, and that's where the human eye comes in and does the analysis. And then obviously collecting media content out with that, but related to what you're dealing with. And monitoring the information environments. It's not just what's being said, it's who's saying it, and evaluating what the information is and the impact it has on you. So these are the sort of 4 things that the military do that you should be doing in your everyday lives when it comes to knowing the digital space and how it affects you and how it can affect you when things go wrong. But knowing the tools and the tactics is really important. So here are examples of some recent battles that were fought. The most recent one is Camilla Long. She, if you're not aware of her, she is a very controversial, arguably controversial columnist for the Times, and she tweeted about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, a piece that she'd written for the Times talking about face masks and how she disagreed with the rule of them being compulsory when worn in shops, etc. But that tweet was taken down. It caused a lot of controversy for reasons I won't go into because we don't have time. The other one that got into trouble, more serious of course, was Greg Glassman, who was and that was about 6 weeks ago now, and he was the CEO of CrossFit. And not only did he resign over that tweet, but he also, the company CrossFit, his company, lost a major sponsor, Adidas. So, and the middle one, this one here, this was the hack that Twitter was underwent about 10 days ago. And of course that had a knock-on effect for the reputation of some of the accounts that were impacted. So just to do a quick analysis, because again, even though you might not be in control, it's still an online reputation issue which you might have to manage as lawyers or as people supporting those that are impacted, or indeed yourself, your own account might get hacked. So this is one of the 45 that were hacked and resulted in tweets being sent out. So there it was, Bill Gates. The tweet went out at 4:34. It took 6 hours for his official spokesperson to excuse me, send out confirmation that it wasn't his tweet. That's quite a long time, but of course it takes a huge amount of investigation behind the scenes to figure it out. But I do recall that Twitter put out a tweet, the Twitter support, very quickly to say there was a problem. So moving on after 10 hours, then we see the CEO of Twitter, Jack, I can't remember his second name, but a very heartfelt and a very empathetic and very spot on response in my view. You know, he's saying it's a tough day. He's just saying it like it is. It must have been exhausting for him, but at least he got a message out, which is great. And that's really important when you're heading up an organization that's undergoing something like this, or you're supporting an organization that's undergoing something like this. And then about an hour later, Twitter support gave the reassurance that they've locked all the accounts of those that are compromised. And so it went on for days and days and days, but it took 8 days to have the full extent of the attack confirmed. I mean, that's a long time, so it just shows what a complex task it must have been. So there we go, 130 accounts targeted, 45 had tweets, 36 had the DM boxes accessed, etc. So, so the main takeaway from this slide is you have to react quickly, but sometimes you can't put out your response quickly. And there are lots of things that are going on in the background to many of the issues that you might come across. So in terms of that rapid reaction, what should you do quickly? Well, the first thing you shouldn't do is to panic, and you shouldn't rush out a response. Remember, Bill Gates' official spokesperson took 6 hours. So the only occasion where you would have to put out a response really quickly is when you go to the second stage, where it's life or public safety. And as we can see, I always use the Metropolitan Police as a good benchmark example, because they're often involved in life-threatening situations. So they always try to get something out within 15 minutes of a reported incident. And this was the Westminster Bridge incident. Very tragically, I think several people died, including a policeman, but they had the call at 2:40 and they got a tweet out within 12 minutes, which is pretty incredible, really, when you think they've got to get to the scene, check up, authenticate the facts. So when you do that initial rapid reaction, remember, it took them 12 minutes to get the tweet out. They've still got to do all the checking. So the rapid reaction process is basically, okay, the authenticity, you need to look at the authenticity and source of the author if it isn't your own, okay? Is it fake news? If it's something you've put out and it's got a bad reaction, you just need to sort of step back and think, does it, is it going to cause problems to life or safety? Operations and relationships, property and financial, as we saw with CrossFit, and most importantly, trust and reputation. And then once you have got that Twitter storm or that issue going on somewhere else in the digital space, you have to monitor. There's lots of services out there that do it. There's even more, there are some very specialised ones that do the analysis as well. And then when you know you've got a problem, that's when you flag it with your key stakeholders, which might be your executive. If it's yours, then you can do that all yourself. But this initial rapid reaction, that should be something you just do. It just take minutes to do. It should not be a long process, because time is of the essence. The next thing you need to do is identify the consequences, strategy and tactics. So I'm talking about fairly high level incident, if you like, or something that's gone very badly wrong. But it still applies for, if it's a personal tweet or a personal social media post which you haven't quite got right. So it's gone out, you're getting lots of flack or whatever, or your company's getting lots of flack, or your client's getting lots of flack. You've got to identify what the consequences of the tweet are, the strategy that you're going to adopt, and what are the tactics. So the strategy will be is to recover the situation. The tactics is how you do it. How you do it, it might be a response, but always create content. Whether you decide to send it out or not, that decision can be made further down the line, but you can still deploy someone, or you can still work on something, think, well, I might say this, but I'm not quite sure. I'll just sit on it for a few minutes just to see how it pans out. And that's where the monitoring is really, really important. So again, continue to monitor the online reaction, work through what the potential scenarios are, consider what your own personal values are if it's a personal social media post that's gone wrong. Olga's talked about organisational values and ethics. It's really, really important. And of course, the legal considerations. Don't say anything that might get you into trouble, or your client or your company into trouble. And the main one is, wherever possible, take the debate offline. And there's a number of ways you can do it. You can ask them to DM you or whoever, if it's a single individual or a group of individuals that are really reacting badly to something that's been said. And finally, before you do sign off anything, it's really important that you get sign off, and that goes through obviously your executive, and if required, and I would strongly recommend it, you obviously are the legal specialist, is just have a look for legal due diligence, so there's nothing defamatory in there or libelous. So moving on, so when you are going through your crisis mitigation for something that's gone out, and you're figuring out how do you respond to this, there's two slides I just want to very briefly go through. It's really important to try and understand and get into the mindset of people that you're delivering it to. I mean, Olga had a great slide with the cartoons, somebody talking about how wealthy they are, but then they don't know if they're going to be speaking to somebody that's just lost the job. So it's really important to get into the mindset of the audience that you're seeking to reach out to and engage with. Those are the three big emotional triggers. That's what sets people off. Obviously, when people life is under threat, they tend to be a bit less predictable. You've got behavioural trends which are now emerging, particularly in light of the COVID crisis. People are a lot more anxious in general. We're seeing a lot more apathy, and we're seeing a lot more frustration, and we're seeing people's irregular social activities. So we've all changed a little bit. So that's another thing, a backdrop that you just need to bear in mind. The other one is keyboard warriors. We all know about them, but there's generally three types in my book. There's those that think they're 10 feet tall, they're very brave, and they're out there giving it all. You've got those that are just bored and they've got nothing to lose. And you've got those that just want a bit of entertainment. And then, of course, you've got the post-COVID effects, which, people just might not be feeling very good. Anyway, so just put yourself in that mindset of who you're speaking to, and get the tone and the language right before you do, you send out anything. And the other thing you need to bear in mind, of course, is fake news. So quite often you might put something out and it might get picked up by AI, or it might be picked up by whoever, somebody with a nefarious intent, and they might start repurposing fake news which will be associated with your account. It's very important. If it's too good to be true, or it's just unbelievable, it probably is unbelievable. And then finally, I've just to end on the big don'ts. For me, mitigation is always the best, but once it's out, I hope I've given you some idea of how you can manage it. But certainly, to stop you from getting there, as Olga said, just give it a few minutes and just think, why am I tweeting this? And when it comes to company and clients, don't share anything unless it's gone out through the official company channels. It's so important not to do that. Commercial and confidential information. Wait. I know you're excited if you've won a big contract, but just wait. And don't share unconfirmed information or hearsay. Don't criticize your company or your clients or your customers or your colleagues. It's easy to do if you're feeling a little bit upset. And obviously, I know Olga's already mentioned it, but don't complain, use sarcasm or emotive language. And finally, on the personal side, keep your personal life off open social media, and you find that you will mitigate that so much easier. Certainly don't post when you're angry, upset, or intoxicated, or anything that's politically controversial. That list that Olga gave of the excluded categories is a very good guideline as to what you should and shouldn't share. Certainly don't share accounts from, and that's the other way you can get into trouble, just sharing stuff that's just not authentic. And as I mentioned earlier, just don't share anything that's unbelievable or shocking. That's a real red flag. And finally, thank you very much. And if you want to read more, I will be blogging tomorrow about this session that we've done in a little bit more detail. Those are my contact details. And yeah, please do connect. That QR code does work if you've got camera phones. You can take a quick snap. And please do follow me on Twitter. Okay, thank you very much. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you very much for that, Sheena, and thank you very much as well, Olga, for your presentation. We do have a few questions from our guests. So if you do have any other questions, please do feel free now to sort of fire away. We'll try and get through as many of them as possible. So one of the first questions was whether certain content, what are your views on certain content that is appropriate for Twitter and not LinkedIn, and vice versa? So what are your views on that?
I think on Twitter, so the rule for social media is don't expect a nuanced conversation. And I think that it's particularly true for Twitter, just because you have fewer characters. So if you want to say something that's really straightforward, then you can say it on Twitter. But if you need to make any qualifications, I would take it to LinkedIn instead, because on LinkedIn you can say it all in one post. Where on Twitter, if you have to share it in a number of tweets, then only one of them can be retweeted out of context. So keep it for short messages that are not particularly nuanced, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, Twitter is a micro-blogging platform. So I think it's good for what you want to use it for, whether it's personal, whether it's you've got your, you know, whether you've got your company account or whatever. But I think when it comes to content, you've just got to think, who's your audience? Who do you want to read it, and what do you want them to get out of it, and the relationship you've got with them. So I use Twitter. I use lists a lot. I mean, I'm more of a listener on Twitter, but when I find something that I really find interesting, I will share it, because I use Twitter more for professional purposes. But it's very much bite-sized sharing. It's almost like you're in the pub and it's, you know, do you want to drink? Have, you know, I think you'd enjoy this sort of thing. That's how I use it. But certainly, Olga's absolutely right. You can't have a debate. And the other point is, it's not the biggest platform. I think it's only 300 million users compared to the 2 or 3 billion that Facebook have got, and I can't remember how many LinkedIn. But LinkedIn is more for, you know, the professional, more in-depth content sharing. I know there's a great debate about how it's going, you know, one way or the other at the moment, but I certainly will would keep, you know, grown-up debate for LinkedIn.
One important thing to say about Twitter, actually, some people say on their Twitter, I am a paralegal at this firm, but my views don't represent my employer. Or yes. Another thing, they do. I'm sorry, but if you, it's unfair, but they do. And another thing that people say in their Twitter bio is RTs are not endorsements, and they are. If you see a message and you choose to share it with everybody who you know on Twitter, possibly thousands of connections, you are endorsing that message. So I would always click before you share. I mean, sometimes I saw the headline looks interesting, I'll share it, but I would always make sure that it is something that you're willing to endorse, because all RTs are endorsements.
Thank you both. Another question we've had in is, how can you retain authenticity online without ruining your online image?
Sheena, do you want to go first?
I think just be true to yourself, because that's what people want to know. And, you know, I'm a great believer in self-belief, and I think if you're a little bit nervous, just have a pep talk with yourself and think, okay, you know, and it's all about personal branding as well. And people find these concepts really quite difficult to get their head around, but once the penny drops, I think, right, okay. So just think about how you'd like to be known and seen, and then curate your content and your sharing strategy, or whatever you want to call it, around that. If you want to be known as the person that, you know, does great legal work in a particular practice area, and I do this voluntary work to support that, or I do this, you know, with my professional organisation to support that, then that's the sort of content that you should be creating online and sharing online to help with that authenticity. I think what people don't like are sort of generalists that just blab about everything. They get more value when it's useful to them and it's thought-provoking, and that they feel they've learned something, even if it's just a little bit of information. That's the beauty of social media, and the power of social media when it's used properly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that authenticity is very important, and to share your personal journey. And the thing is, nobody else has the same journey as you, and nobody can be you, and it's such a big strength of yours. So I would, I think it's entirely possible. I think that some things we discussed, so don't say things you don't want to see in the newspaper. Don't say things that offend others, particularly their protected characteristics. And also, I think authentically, if you want to be seen as a person who lifts other people up, so the positive person in terms of, like we said earlier, somebody was saying they share things. Their last post was to thank somebody for a post, or to, when you see somebody else being their authentic selves, and it can be a bit scary, but when you see somebody else doing it, support them as well, and then support will come to you for when you're feeling nervous about opening up about your true self. But I would definitely, I mean, of course, it requires, everything that you post online requires a little thought, but if you're not authentic, then it's just going to be so much harder for you to grow your presence.
Okay.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question was, how can one maintain a certain level of privacy whilst developing a personal brand online?
I just think we should forget about privacy, because if you are developing your brand online, you don't. I mean, it's at your control what you post, but once it's out there, it's out there. So for example, sometimes people have their Facebook profiles where they share things with their friends and it's not related to their firm. It doesn't have their real picture. And they think that, oh, this is private. But as Sheena said, it goes out to billions of people who have Facebook. But even if your account is private, it's still not private. And we see things going from private Facebook accounts end up on the front pages of newspapers. So I think just don't, just because your profile is private, don't think that it is. I think it's better to err on the side of caution.
I think the level of control of your privacy is basically what you decide you're comfortable sharing with. And a lot of people, I mean, they share everything, you know, and even though they've got quite controlled privacy settings, they're very open people, but other people are very guarded and they just lurk on Facebook. But the screen grab can be a very powerful thing. But my rule of thumb, my general guiding principle is I don't share anything if I don't want it to appear in the front page news. I used to be in a very high profile job, and I was very careful about, and this was before social media, and I was always very careful just about how I acquitted myself in public, how I did this and how I did that, in case it ended up in the front news. And it's the same online. Just don't put anything on social media, because if you get into trouble at any stage in your life or career, you can guarantee they'll do a search and they'll find you from like 10 years ago when you were, you know, drinking, you know, at a party or something. So just be careful that, and if you want to completely maintain privacy, just don't put anything on any social media platform that you don't want made public to the world. It's as simple as that, really, I think.
Good stuff. Okay, next question. As someone who uses social media to help others with chronic illnesses, how do you suggest I ensure this doesn't damage my job prospects?
Ooh.
I mean, I don't see why it would. Sheena? I think it's just such a, you sound like a lovely person. Thank you for doing what you do.
Obviously in a very giving profession. Now, I suspect you're alluding to the confidentiality issues around the, you know, the patient carer or medical practitioner relationship. I think when you are genuinely proud of what you do, there are ways that you can articulate it, and without mentioning particular cases. You can refer to it, you know, I'm very proud to be in this profession because I make an impact on people's lives. You can talk about it in general terms, but I see what you mean. You can't talk about the great successes you have professionally because you can't talk about them because of the nature of your work. But I think you can talk broadly, and you can maybe talk in terms of the great strides that so if it's a particular illness, that maybe cancer or whatever it is, you can talk in other terms, and then that helps build up your brand online, that you're somebody that is caring and knows a lot about whatever the ailment is, but you're not talking about exactly what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anything you'd add to that, Olga? Brilliant. Okay, next question. What do you think about people sharing stuff on platforms such as Reddit?
I
don't use Reddit much, but I know somebody that ended up in prison because of it. So I would say, look at it, lurk at it, but don't contribute to it.
Yeah, I think it's the same rules as everywhere else. I think there's so much useful stuff on Reddit. But yeah, I think it's the same as other platforms. Be careful what you say. And another thing is, if you use not your real name on Reddit, as loads of people do, and that you think that your username has nothing to do with your name or with your job, it doesn't mean that you're safe. Because we have stories of, I think it was one of the politicians who posted things on Reddit under a pseudonym years ago and was commenting. It did come out that the pseudonym was connected to him, and then that affected his political career. So on Reddit, don't think about that you're private if you're using a different name.
And even if you're using a VPN, I think the authorities can still trace your IP address. I don't know how that side of life works, but yeah, it's amazing what you can find out with a little bit of knowledge when it comes to chasing people. But but Reddit, I don't use it a lot. But as I said before, just don't put anything out there if you don't want it traced back to you, or you don't want it coming back to haunt you. It's as simple as that.
Okay. And another good question we've had in, is there a way to easily delete old stuff that you perhaps posted on your social media channels, such as Twitter, from years ago that you perhaps don't want visible now? Is there a kind of fast, easy way to do that?
You can do it. I did it. So when I started my company, I still had a Twitter account, but it was for my, you know, it was when I lived overseas. So I just completely went through it. But unfortunately, fortunately for me, I didn't have many tweets, but unfortunately, I just had to do it by hand. But you can do it. And I would encourage people to do that as a matter of routine anyway, just to detox your account. And you might have done something 10 years ago or 5 years ago and you've forgotten about it, you know, did it one Friday night when you got home or something. But doing a digital detox is a good practice to have anyway. But no, I mean, I haven't even attempted to go through my Facebook.
I did my Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I used Facebook from the very beginning, when it was still only available to universities. And yeah. I just deleted it. And they don't make it easy, because when you say that you want to delete it, they give you a 30-day window. They say, okay, we'll delete it, but you can change your mind in 30 days. So if you want to if you log in at any time in 30 days and your account comes back, and you know, for me, I found it very addictive. So I kept checking into this and extending my deadline for another 30 days. So it's not very easy.
Morgan has said that you need to make a right to be forgotten request, which is a very good point. That law has been brought in exactly for that. You know, people's digital footprint from years ago was brought up, and anyway, it's a very valid point. There are agencies that will do it for you, but they charge a lot of money. I think there's one in New York. I'm not sure if there's one in the US, in the UK, but I think if you do sort of, you go through life and you get to a very, you know, senior level, particularly now. I mean, I don't have that problem because social media wasn't around when I was younger, but, you know, you might be posting stuff now, but in 10, 15 years, when you're, you know, a senior partner in a law firm, you might think, better get that tidied up. So that's why you should do a digital detox on a regular basis.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And if anyone has any other final questions as we wrap up into the next 5 minutes, please do pop into the Q&A. A nice light-hearted one. People love your cartoons, Olga. Who's the artist?
The artist, his name is Jack Broom. And if you go to one of my websites, which is Networking Gone Wrong, there are loads and loads of cartoons by him. He's brilliant.
Good stuff. And I guess in terms of some maybe final top tips, you know, I know you've given very extensive presentations and they've been really helpful, and we'll be sharing them and circling them along with the recording. But I guess if you were to kind of give your top 3 tips as takeaways from this discussion, what would you both give?
Well, I think that I feel like we scared you quite a lot. And I think that, yes, you need to think about what you post on social media, but you also should enjoy it. You know, there's so many opportunities to grow your business, to grow your personal brand, to achieve your goals. So just bear if you think, if you're careful about it, you think about it, you will be fine. The top 3 points, I think, as we said before, wait and think, is this the best way to achieve my goal? And is the reason, be mindful about what you post. So are you posting something because it's going to help someone, or are you doing this just to put someone down? Are you doing something to, I don't know, just whatever it might be. Think about your purpose. Think about whether it's the right platform. I think it was a really good question, and somebody asked, should I put it on Twitter or should I put it on LinkedIn? And Sheena made an excellent point about taking things offline. And that's something that hasn't really occurred to me, because I think we have our conversation, very, very, very long debates in the comments. But perhaps there are times when you're getting into controversial issues with somebody and you can take it offline, because it's got to be the right channel for your conversation. And thirdly, you know, live your values, live your brand's values. And if you are mindful about them and what kind of vibes you want to give out online, you will be fine.
So my top 3 tips, like Olga said, just give it a moment, particularly if you're, excuse me, just before you react, give it a moment, excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing. It's the most difficult one as well.
The second one is, how does this impact my personal brand? How does it make me look? Am I putting somebody down, or am I seen as a leader that's taking initiative? Sorry about the squeaky voice. And then the third one is the legacy piece, which again, is it going to come back to haunt you? So just think about the future as well as the present.
I think one of the other points that we get a lot of questions for ourselves when lawyers are thinking of making content or creating content or posting. You know, we are only human at the end of the day. If they made a typo, for example, or the comma was in the wrong place on a post or whatever, is that going to completely damage their reputation online? Or, you know, is that just authentic? And can you give people assurances on that? Because I get a lot of people, particularly candidates and future aspiring lawyers, saying, look, I'd love to post, but I'm just worried that if I make a mistake, that's the end of it. What would you say to those worries?
I would say, you know, I think that you should, if you make a typo, nobody's going to care. I'm foreign in this country. I make typos all the time, or I make grammatical mistakes online. That doesn't stop me from having a successful business, you know? And the fact that I'm not trying to run it past an editor or copy editor every time I post something. And I have made so many mistakes online before I have written my course and after I have written my course. So of course we are all human. And I think it is about being humble. So I think if you go there and you say, I am the greatest at everything, it's like hubris in ancient Greece, when a human is saying, I'm greater than the gods, and the gods come down and say, no, you're not. And there'll always be somebody who'll put you down. But if you approach it without hubris and you say, here I am, this is my thing, sometimes some things I get right, some things I get wrong, doing my best, people will respond to it, and they'll respond to it authentically as well, and they'll enjoy communicating with you. So absolutely post and make mistakes as well. The more mistakes you make, the more you'll learn. But it's not about protected characteristics. Don't make fun out of people's of those, and then you'll be fine.
Those are very good points, but I think if you're really worried about grammar and typos, just download Grammarly. I mean, there's all kinds of apps you can do that will just do that for you. AI is wonderful, and this is for some things. So this is one reason where you can use it, and you can use it very well. Or just, if you live with someone, just, you know, ask them to check it, but don't let it put you off. And the odd typo is fine. I'm a communicator. When it's in the big body of a text, or a paper, that's when it's a bit more serious. But then you just have a peer review with someone. That's just best practice. But don't be afraid. Otherwise, you've got to get out there. You've got to, you know, have a presence online. We're all in this situation now, you know, with COVID. If we're not online, we're not there. So you have to get out there and you have to be active. And don't let typos put you off.
And we talk about being kind to others, but be kind to yourself as well. You know, we all do our best.
Exactly, and that brings us nicely to a close. I've just shared Olga's appearance on our Legally Speaking podcast to all the attendees as well. You should definitely check that out, because Olga shares lots of snippets on there about how we can help generally, which mirrors on from what you're talking there about being kind to yourself and kind to others. So I'd just like to say a very big thank you to yourself, Olga, and Sheena for sharing your expert insights. Just to recap, we will be sharing the presentations and sending the recording, and it will be going online in the coming days. You can access that via the Kissoon Carr YouTube channel as well. And as I say, check out Sheena's blog that she'll be releasing very, very shortly. And if you do have any questions or have anything, the contact details, everyone has put their LinkedIn URLs in here. Please do feel to reach out. We'll try and help as many of you as possible. But thanks so much once again for everyone for tuning in. And yeah, we wish you well and take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Rob.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.